Tentative information is information that is not fully proven or concluded. It is when ideas are thought of but not really confirmed. This is what John Langdon Down did. He described the characteristics and symptoms of Down syndrome, but he could not figure out the direct cause of the disorder. Down was an English physician in the 1800s. He devoted much of his life working with children that have a mental illness. While working at the Royal Earlswood Asylum for Idiots as a chief physician, Down observed common characteristics such as an upward slant to the eye, flat nose, and a long tongue between the mentally ill children. After Down discovered the characteristics of this disorder, many researchers thought it was due to a kind of thyroid disease or a persistent infection such as tuberculosis or syphilis, which was false. Another theory floating around was that children with Down syndrome were children who had not fully finished developing in the mother's womb prior to birth. This may be laughable to us today, but it was a viable theory back then. Since 1932, the theory of genetics was thought to be linked with Down syndrome when Dr. Warrenberg, a Dutch ontologist, proposed it. In 1934, Adrian Blair, an American scientist, introduced the likelihood that Down syndrome was due to the triplication called a trisomy of a chromosome. Unfortunately, the tools to examine these theories did not exist, even though time has proven these two men right.
Durable information is long-lasting and concrete information. In 1959, Dr. Jerome Lajeune, a French physician, made the discovery that Down syndrome was the result of a chromosomal abnormality. This is an example of durable information because the results he came up with were proven and not just thought of as an idea. Lajeune's research directed him to seeing that people who had Down syndrome had 47 chromosomes instead of the normal 46. Later, while working alone, he and Patricia Jacobs from England discovered that the additional chromosome was found on the 21st chromosome in the DNA strand of those who were known as mongoloids at the time. This information that they revealed led to the term Trisomy 21.
In 1866, when Dr. Down discovered the characteristics of the children who had this disorder, he used the term mongoloid because the facial features of people who had Down syndrome were similar to those of people from Mongolia. Back then, the people did not understand the racial aspects as we have in today's society. They did not see how it affected the Mongolian people using the term mongoloid. This was due to the classification system developed by an early anthropologist, Blumenbach, who described the divisions of the human races. It wasn't until 1961, a prominent group of geneticists from around the world got the name of this disorder changed from mongoloid to Down syndrome, aka Trisomy 21, because the Asian genetic researchers and the parents of children with Down syndrome felt the current term mongoloid was highly prejudiced against the Mongolian people. In the late 1960s, while scientists were still trying to understand the causes of Down syndrome, there were side effects that are not too wonderful. Scientists were able to genetically test on newborns for Down syndrome. It led to an era where babies were stripped of their parents before they bonded, so they wouldn't be sad when the baby were to die during the experiment. It wasn't until 1964 till two scientists named Dr. Stedman and Dr. Einhorn said that this was wrong and wasn't helpful for society to institutionalize children. Back into the 20th century, people with Down syndrome were still being institutionalized and often even killed because they were declared imperfect during those times. A specific example that shows how society was so cruel to children with Down syndrome is during the 1940s, during Adolf Hitler's reign. He implemented Action T4, also known as Action T4, where people with Down syndrome were euthanized by doctors and midwives. They wanted to make a society that would be clear of people who were deformed and deemed useless to them. As time passed, more people and scientists became more educated about the effects of Trisomy 21. Scientists are coming up with new, innovative ways to reduce the cost of Trisomy 21. They are going above and beyond to determine where the extra chromosome comes from. Since there are more than 250 genes in the 21st chromosome alone, science has not come up with an explanation of what each of the genes' job is. Instead of experimenting on kids themselves who have Down syndrome, geneticists are able to experiment on mice to come up with more accurate treatments. Furthermore, people who have this condition are given more rights and privileges than ever before. One specific example of the rights given to these people is the right to a public education.
Scientific knowledge is invented in the sense that scientists use new tools, inventions, and information to discover and come up with theories from experiments they perform and results they obtain. Down did not have the opportunity to explain the causes of Down syndrome because he did not have the tools to do so. In the 1800s, it was very complicated for scientists to study chromosomes due to their small size. He was only able to recognize certain features that those children who had Down syndrome shared. He also wrote the first clinical description of the disorder in 1866. Later on, when those necessary apparatus were invented, more discoveries were also possible. All of the scientists that tried to make further discoveries following Down used the information he gathered and published in his clinical description. A significant discovery that led to this breakthrough was the use of a karyotype. A karyotype is a display of an individual's chromosomes in the cell. Around the late 1950s, Jerome Lajeune used this to look at the chromosomes and observe the 23 pairs of chromosomes to check for any abnormalities. He realized that the 21st chromosome had an extra chromosome, totaling the karyotype to 47 chromosomes versus the normal 46. In recent discoveries of understanding trisomy 21, today's genetic researchers are experimenting on mice and altering their genes to carry the 21st chromosome. They are developing trisomic mouse models that show the symptoms of human Down syndrome. Also, scientists are now using new inventions such as the ultrasound to first diagnose the child to see if they are affected by trisomy 21. This is a less harmful way to detect if the child has the disorder. With prenatal screening, scientists can now examine the fetus and determine how to treat for the disorder or make it less severe when the baby is born. Science is now progressing rapidly due to the new inventions and technology being created.